This is the Dreadful Podcast on TV Podcast Industries, our 501st episode. We've watched Penny Dreadful, City of Angels Season 1, and here's our wrap-up.
There will come a time when the world is ready for me. When nation will battle nation. When race will devour race. When brother will kill brother. Until not a soul is left. Are you ready? Tiago Vega.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. This is TV Podcast Industries, where we're talking about the Penny Dreadful City of Angels first season. Hopefully, first of a couple of seasons. This is our wrap-up episode. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, Penny Faithful. I am one of your other hosts, John.
I am one of your other hosts, Chris.
And joining us for this discussion, we have one of our other fellow Penny Faithful, Ronaldo Gizmundo. Welcome back, mate.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be back. Thank you for having me. This is the first time I think that the full complement is all here. I've had the great fortune of speaking to each and every one of you on my show. I've been chatting with John and Derek yourself on the Penny Dreadful recap of, the older seasons. But yeah, it's great to see Chris here as well. I'm pumped.
Great to have you here. Yeah, we couldn't really do the wrap up of City of Angels if we didn't have Ray back on for this episode, because he did help us out on those recaps of the first 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful. And having all 4 of us here for this episode feels right, really, directly after our 500th episode, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's great to have you here, Ray, for sure. And yeah, great to have you as well, Chris. Have you here. It's brilliant.
It's not like you just had me for every other episode, but yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I'd like to be wanted.
If you don't know Ray, if you didn't listen to our previous podcast and didn't catch him on there, Ray is the host of Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. We made him change the name from a Moon Knight podcast to the Moon Knight podcast on our Penny Dreadful podcast, didn't we? So yeah, Ray, you're right now in the middle of probably the biggest Marvel event for Moon Knight that's out there, which is Age of Khonshu, where Moon Knight is up against the Avengers. How's that been going for you?
Yeah, good. If I can just say as well, just with the Moon Knight podcast, which you guys got us onto, it's really catching on, actually. I think there've been a few questions, is it A or is it the? And I've heard to always say, look, it's the. Excellent. Because we are the Moon Knight podcast. So yeah, thanks for that. That's it's really cool.
You have to be the definitive article, Ray.
Exactly. But yeah, the Age of Khonshu Part 2, where it's up to Part 2, obviously, in issue 34 of the Avengers. It's hitting the ground running. It's so fast paced. Jason Aaron, Javier Garron on art, beautiful art. So we're absorbed in it. We're loving it. Some loonies, it may not be their favorite iteration of Moon Knight, but that's what kind of makes this thing fun. You can discuss why and why not, and as long as things are kept on the level. Yeah. One of the things I've really liked about it is that they actually put in a few different versions of the character of Moon Knight, the way he's been portrayed over the years as well. So it's kind of something for everybody. So if you don't like the main version that you see of Moon Knight in the book, it's kind of like, well, turn to the next page and you'll see another version of him or another portrayal of the character as well. So it's kind of, it's interesting, I'm sure, for you guys to be able to discuss those different versions of him over the course of, 40 years, 50 years, 45 years, something like that. He's been around. So lots of different versions since the 70s, I suppose. So it's kind of cool that they're bringing them all into this big story. And Jason Aaron is such a good writer.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Jason Aaron is a good egg, as we say.
Yeah, he's great. He comes up with really good ideas. A lot of them, for me, you kind of think, that was in the back of my head. Like, everything that he does seems to make sense. It's kind of like, this is great. Like, we're getting almost fan service. I don't want to say that because I don't want to take it down to just mere fan service, but he really does tap into what I guess a lot of fans have always speculated or wanted in Moon Knight, and he brings it out. So yeah, without any spoilers, but there are a few big things that happen in issues 33 and 34. So it's we've got another 4 more issues, so it's a 6-parter, I know. So we'll see where he takes it, but it's up 5th gear, like already. It's, I don't know what they're going to do.
Love it. If you want to hear Ray's podcast, Ray, do you want to tell them where you can find it?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I've patented the Ray Ramble, so you'll hear me rambling on the show. You can find me on Twitter, the handle @ITK Moon Knight. Also as well, to make things very easy, on Facebook, facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight, and a Facebook group as well, facebook.com/groups/ITK Moon Knight. And look, as well, I was just reminded, Derek, for the younger, generation, Instagram, I believe is more popular these days, I think. I don't know. But we're on there too. ITK Moon Knight. Just check us out.
Excellent.
You're down with the kids. I get it.
Exactly. Someday we'll get onto TikTok somehow. I still don't know how that works.
Oh my God, I want to see you on TikTok
Anyway.
so badly. Just do. I know.
I do too.
Okay.
Is that just a social media
It
platform
is,
for
it is.
clocks?
I just want to
I
see
don't know.
you do
It's like,
the
here's a grandfather clock.
dance. Oh my God. Listeners, if you want to see Derek and John dancing on TikTok, let us know, because they will. You know, if we put enough pressure on them, we can get this to happen. Come on, people.
No, it's not about the pressure, Chris. It's about the amount of drink I've had, and then I will be dancing. Or, as at my brother's wedding, where I was affectionately called the Jombie, rather than a zombie, because I was actually dancing fast asleep by the sounds of it. I was so inebriated that I was kind of just swaying to the music as I slept standing up. So there's a vampire for you straight off.
So if you too want to see a swaying zombie asleep while on social media, and to some, well, we'll call it that Penny Dreadful song that you heard at the beginning, just let us know by going over to Twitter @TVPodIndustries, or just go to facebook.com/group/TVPodcastIndustries and let us know. We'll set up a poll, vote, do whatever you want. Just get these boys on TikTok. Anyway.
I think that might have worked for the Watchmen, maybe. TikTok might have gone in.
Yeah, that could have been our entry point for sure.
I think we've missed our chance.
Thank God they're not doing a season 2.
Well, let's get into our discussion about Penny Dreadful. I know that Penny Dreadful was released in the UK quite recently on Sky Atlantic. They decided to hold off on releasing the episodes weekly, release the whole thing for everybody to download and watch, and then release weekly as well. So I think right now, as we're recording this recap episode, they're all available to watch for everybody, but they're still going out on Wednesday nights. They're about halfway through the season on their weekly release. So this is a good point to jump in and listen to a recap of the entire season of the show. You may be listening to this just before season 2 comes out, if there is a season 2. So it may be just down the line. We will recap the whole season. We'll discuss most of the major moments and the major storylines of the season, and discuss what our thoughts overall were on the show. Before we go into that season, just a general idea of what you guys thought. Ray, I know you've sent in a little bit of feedback over the course of the season. We know you've been generally enjoying the show, but what was your overall feeling when you finished the season? What did you think of the show overall?
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I came into it with a little bit of trepidation, only because I hold the previous seasons in such high regard, and knowing of the format of City of Angels being a departure from that of the Victorian age and such. So I was a little bit hesitant, but I'd say after about maybe 1 or maybe 2 episodes, it got me hooked. I mean, the performances from the actors were great. Nathan Lane, in particular, was my standout. I mean, but they were all really good. But also the interweaving of all the plots as well. So no, I liked it. And I think by the end of it, it was very much a standalone kind of series. Really, it didn't really need even Penny Dreadful in it. I felt.
Yeah.
I felt.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's one of the things that stood out to me over the course of the season. I started to notice that the main graphic for the show was City of Angels in massive letters and then a tiny little Penny Dreadful underneath it. But just the show is named Penny Dreadful City of Angels, so it looks like it's got much bigger tie to the original series. But actually, when you look at the graphics for the show, it is City of Angels with just that little tag showing it's a John Logan supernatural production, let's say. So it's one of the things that I just thought was quite interesting. John, what did you think overall of this first season?
I'm kind of with Ray here, to be honest. I really loved the show in the end, and I thought it gave just John Logan's such a good writer. It was really well written. It was really intriguing. Like, I loved the history aspects of it around sort of that whole the Nazi infiltration into America. That kind of almost the precursor to Man in a High Castle kind of vibe to it. This idea of espionage and competing interests. So I loved that. And the same with like Brian Koenig and the rocket technology. Those kind of elements to me I found really interesting. But and the performances were great. I mean, they were just so good. And of course, I think if you're given sort of that kind of script, it probably is such a great thing as an actor, to get your teeth into. Yeah. I think similarly, I think just probably the pressure on the series because it had the Penny Dreadful moniker, was the hurdle to overcome, because it was never going to be the same as, sort of those twisted, dark, literary, giants like Dracula and Frankenstein. This had no reference like that. The people who were fans of those books, of those characters, so it's totally fresh, and I think it is a great kind of, it's just novel and new, and that's what I liked about it. I mean, even season 3 of the original gets a bit of splashback in that sense, so this was always probably going to get that, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I think, again, a bit like with Ray, I would have just liked to have seen some more supernatural elements here in that. I think, particularly, there was the Santa Muerta thing and Magda, obviously, but I think Rio's references to Aztecs and the blood and that kind of the law around Aztecs and maybe even to an extent a bit, Native American Indians, that kind of the law surrounding those cultures and the superstitions around them, I think could have really, really worked here, much more than was utilized by John Logan. But, c'est la vie, it didn't happen. So, but I really, really, enjoyed this series.
Excellent. Chris, overall thoughts?
I've become more trepid. We're recording this a bit out from our, since we kind of wrapped up on it. And so when I was kind of trying to parse my feelings on it, I've become more tepid on it and I'm a bit more trepidatious going into season 2. Nothing to say. While we were in it, it was great. And there are some standout performances and standout episodes. It's got that season 1 problem, especially with John Logan, and we've discussed this kind of at length. It's I should say ad nauseum at this point. It's
don't say ad nauseum, Chris.
Oh, but why? I said I discussed this problem ad nauseum, not this problem with this show ad nauseum. I discussed the problem ad nauseum, where
nobody's nauseous at your voice.
Oh Chris. My God, I am. Essentially, it's the setups are there for so much that just was not answered. So the perfect example is Craft. How Craft will play into the greater story. We, throughout the season, we were all at one point or another, mostly me, I know I was more vocal about it, going, what's the deal with Craft? How is this going to play into the greater? And it was about episode 8? Episode 8 was the introduction to Craft's background. Episode 9 was kind of him getting pushed a bit further, and then the final scene with him in episode 10 with the Heil, and the salute was just, okay, still don't fully know how that will play into a greater storyline. It seems to be that they were trying, unfortunately, either this was maybe a more than a 10 episode original order. John Logan pitched 2 or 3 seasons first.
Definitely.
And it's just, I'm going to set all these seeds up. So I just felt it didn't, it cannot be considered a self-contained season. Like, you will need season 2 to answer some of the questions that were raised, or to make aspects of season 1 make more sense. So overall, I enjoyed it. Overall, it has some fantastic elements. It has some great performances. Again, as Ronaldo said, like Nathan Lane is a standout. It's just, I just feel at this point, like you said, even what you said, it's missing Supernatural. I think that the promise at the end at the last episode with Magda and Tiago, like that could be even more Supernatural in the next season. It's just, we don't.
Absolutely.
So that's
absolutely. One of the things I really liked after the season, one of the things I really caught was a comment from John Logan saying this idea that he had of keeping your 2 main characters, Tiago and Magda, apart for 10 entire episodes of a season. He just loves the concept of having those 2 people that you're following in completely different ways throughout the season, and then never meeting even once. And even in that last scene, it's her whispering on the wind and him not hearing her. So they still haven't shared a scene together from the first episode to the last, which is a really interesting thing in a show. It's sort of something that they've never really done on anything else I can think of, having 2 completely different, two main characters on completely different story paths.
But the question is, just because you can do it, should you do it? That is the question. Just because I can jump off a bridge, should I jump off the bridge? That is,
it's not that big a thing, I suppose, as jumping off a bridge, Chris, I don't think. But it is an interesting idea. And I think for me, for my idea for the first season, what I really did enjoy was the concept of using the past to interpret things that were happening in the real world today. It's something that Logan has spoken about, that's why he wanted to write it. Instead of just shouting into the void, he wanted to talk about what was really going on in the world today and what was happening with American politics and with immigration in America, and with how people are being treated that are non-white and outside of the main section of society, or the people that think they have the power. So I think he really accomplished that goal throughout the season. I think he had some amazing moments in this season that, as we watched them, things were going on in the real world that he couldn't possibly have imagined were happening on those particular weeks that we were watching the episode. Sometimes it was, I think we had a couple of warnings before the episode aired, because we were going, this is something that can be seen in the real world right now, and everybody might find this quite a difficult watch, I suppose. So I think overall what he accomplished with that was excellent. I do think, I know we keep mentioning that there's going to be a season 2 of this, and I know there's a lot of people that think there's not going to be a season 2. One of the things that I just want to point out is that this show moved to LA because it got a massive grant from LA to make the show there. It got $20 million, at least, to make the episodes this season. That's a massive boost to it. So it's quite likely that they brought Logan on board and said, here's this massive investment, make your show. And he said, I'll do it if I get 2 seasons. So because they had all that payback, and, the rights were sold internationally and all that kind of stuff, I do think that the monetary side of this is kind of taken care of, regardless of the actual viewership live weekly, which wasn't great on Showtime itself, but the channel itself doesn't have massive ratings. It's a very much a premium channel. So in terms of whether it will get a second season, I do think it will, if they have any belief in what he's trying to deliver. And I think that does change how a story is done. It's kind of like making the first episode of a movie series. If you're making that going, well, I have a second episode coming out in the next couple of months or couple of years, then I'll change the story. Whereas I don't think he was ever intending this to be a standalone season.
The classic example recently is Watchmen, in that sense, where this is a standalone 1 season only. Okay, HBO can go off and do a season 2, but it's not going to be Damon Lindelof that will do it. And I think, classically, it's The Wire, where the creators of The Wire came and said, we have five seasons across 5 different areas of Baltimore around drugs, and we will tap into each of that. But once it's done, it's done. And I think, I think that's the constant battle in TV between TV studios and dare I say even film studios, this battle of, what the creator is looking to do, and then how that Evolves, if it becomes popular or not, how then that gets modified, because they do it for 25 seasons, like, for example, Supernatural, which I happen to like. It would have been kind of interesting if the Winchester boys had come down from Seattle and joined the fight against Magda. But I think that's the constant battle of TV and movies, to be honest. And that's the kind of creative tension there. I think. I was just going to say, I also think that. I think this season of Penny Dreadful City of Angels is very similar to season 1 of Penny Dreadful, because that really didn't give you the overall element. It answered the story about Mina Harker, and it answered that story. But ultimately, after the 3 seasons, you realize it was this battle of Vanessa with Dracula and with the devil, and here similarly, the answer is really into the Hazlitt murders. Everything else is still up in the air a bit, and so I see a bit of a commonality. I'm not saying it's obviously not exactly the same, but for sure, there is that commonality. And I think the main difference is that there's maybe a little bit more artistic license with going back into the Victorian period, and using literary characters as that sort of catalyst, compared to trying to get a more realistic tone around things like building a motorway and the sort of the race and culture wars that were happening in the 30s. It's kind of a different slant. So, but yeah, I
totally agree with you that there's the connection between Penny Dreadful season 1 and this season. I can definitely see what you mean. I think maybe the Hazlitt murder element of it, which is the central storyline from the first episode to the last, I think it wasn't enough of a reveal, I suppose, because it was just dropped in a line where we found out who we knew murdered the Hazlitts pretty much from the 3rd episode. We kind of knew that it was going to be Molly's mother that was the murderer, but it's dropped in a line in the last episode. So it was a through-line story, but it didn't end off in like the massive battle that we saw in the finale of season 1 of Penny Dreadful, I suppose. So maybe that was a little bit unsatisfactory as the central storyline that it was all pinned on. So that's kind of it for the overall thoughts on the first season of the show. I know we're in our recap episode now, so we're going to spoil everything about the season overall. John's going to give us a bit of a summary for what's happened in the season. Guys, if you want to jump in at any point and talk about any individual moments that are going out. But this is kind of the boiling down of all of the central storyline of season 1 of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. John, do you want to give us the summary for the show?
Sure. The Lady of the Holy Death, Santa Muerta, and her demon sister Magda discuss the fate of mankind. Magda believes that all mankind needs to be the monster he truly is being told he can, and wants to prove it to Santa Muerta. Magda kills a group of Mexican farm workers, including Jose Vega. As Jose dies in her arms, Santa Muerta protects his son, Tiago, leaving him scarred for life. Now, in 1938, on his first day as the only Mexican-American detective in the LAPD, Tiago Vega is confronted by the grisly murder of the Hazlitts, a rich white family from Beverly Hills. Working with his Jewish partner, Lewis Michner, their investigation leads them to the Joyful Voices Ministry, where Tiago falls in love with his prime suspect in the case, Sister Molly Finister. But Molly learns that her own mother, Miss Adelaide, had the Hazlitt family murdered to protect their church's wealth and influence. Adelaide used traditional Mexican iconography to hide the motive for the Hazlitt's deaths. Reeling from the revelation, Sister Molly takes her own life and is welcomed into the arms of Santa Muerta.
So that's kind of what we were talking about beforehand, the kind of revelation, I suppose, that Miss Adelaide is the one that had the Hazlitt family killed. And this idea that she used the Mexican iconography to hide the motive isn't really explored throughout the season. You know, it's something that causes Diego to get the blame effectively for the death. And we know that it's from the Mexican community, or we're told throughout the season that they're the ones who are being investigated for the murder. But did you guys think that this was something that wasn't really pulled out throughout the season? I don't think she even mentions it in that last episode.
I can only speak for myself, but when the premise of the Hazlitt murders came about, for me it seemed like, okay, this will be one of the main focal points. It will be a running thread throughout the whole season. And as you alluded to, Derek, I felt it took a back seat, and there was, as you say, there could have been so much more that was explored in it. For me, the pacing felt a bit off, but I guess I know what John Logan was trying to do. It was only a tool, and not the main kind of focal point, because realistically, the whole season was kind of, the momentum was brought forth by all the interactions between those main characters. And the Hazlitt case, really, I mean, it has its place in there, but it's not the main thrust. But yeah, I just found it was a little off for me because, it kind of just disappeared, and it was, as you say, it was kind of just mentioned in passing, and that was it. And even towards the end of the season, it was kind of glossed over really quickly. It's like, well, wow, everyone was talking about the Hazlitt case. It was, Michner and Tiago were meant to find the killers, or at least get someone to step in as the murderer for it. But it kind of got lost in the whole mesh of things.
Yeah, I definitely think it got lost, but I think where it played the bigger part, and I think, as you say, it's more oblique, really. It's kind of the draw in, and then it's really, I mean, there are a few moments early on where they're following the leads, like going to Molly's kind of beachside house and so on. But I think the big point where it played in is ultimately where it plays into Michner effectively giving Diego that choice, and to pin their murders on him, as well as with Officer Riley. And it also, I think, spoke to just the general, dare I say it, this idea of racial bias within the police, where you had Captain Vanderhoff constantly saying, I don't actually really want you to investigate this murder. I just need effectively a patsy, which ultimately is what Michner delivers to him, in order to, save Mateo, from, being implicated for the death of Riley. So it kind of worked in a way to that kind of thing. But ultimately, the idea of, as you say, I think with Miss Adelaide, I think that was possibly where it really kind of just got kind of, was allowed to slide. I think, but on the point of Miss Adelaide, I think for me as well, I thought that scene with Sister Molly, taking her own life actually was just quite incredible. Really and I think, the great thing I like about what John Logan does, and I think the actors here, is that, someone like Miss Adelaide, I mean, she was obnoxious. She was horrible all the way through. Like, you could see why Sister Molly wants to kind of run away to Mexico with Tiago, and just get out of there, like the pressure. Just in that moment where she sees her daughter sort of lying or face down in the water with the blood around her, and you see just the acting chops of Amy Madigan. I just thought I thought she was amazing. And I really liked her. You felt sorry for her in that moment, even though she'd been despicable pretty much all the way through. And that's kind of what I love, the nuance that comes in actual characterization and people's portrayal. I mean, unfortunately, there is this, we kind of live in this world where everything has to be black or white. And yet everyone lives their life in just pure, like, grey. And I don't mean that by being like boring sods. I just mean like, obviously that everyone's very complex. And I love that John Logan kind of can capture that in the characterization. I think that's really good. I think the one drawback in this season, and that we've kind of mentioned a few times, is that there's so many characters in here, all grey, that a lot of the nuances can be hidden. While I think the Hazlitt case
was the main jump-off point at the beginning of the season, and the main end to one of the major characters is caused by the Hazlitt case in the last episode of the season, and an end to another character is caused by it as well. I do think that it was hidden in the background with so much other stuff going on. And I think there's a few things that they could have explored, like why there was a ritualistic killing here that really didn't seem to be pulled out enough in the show. Anything on this, Chris, before we continue on with the summary?
Yeah, just really quickly. It was too late. Essentially, it was just, if they had this reveal at episode 5, then it could have been explored a bit further. But it almost seemed like we had all this other great story and they were wrapping things up and went, oh shit, we forgot to tell them. Holy God. Okay, quickly, put it in this line. Okay, there you go. That neatly ties a bow around it. But if you had to put this in episode 5, then you can still have all the other story beats, but then you could have explored that one piece, which is essentially why Miss Adelaide decided it needed to be the kind of Santa Muerte kind of ritualistic, which is pretty much because she was racist and she wanted to pin it on the Mexicans, and that then allows her to work with the Nazis to get her end result, which is exactly where we end up anyway at the end of the season. Exactly. So I just think it was just time drop.
Just a little bit further discussion.
If it had been earlier, it would have been great. Anyway, moving on swiftly.
Yeah, however, before Tiago's arrival at the LAPD as a detective, Lewis Michner had been fighting the creeping influence of the Nazis on Los Angeles with his friends Dottie, Sam, Anton, and the Jewish mafia boss Benny Berman. When Sam and Anton are murdered by the Nazis, the Jewish friends try to save a young scientist, Brian Koenig. Koenig has worked out the secret to rocket-propelled flight, which could give the Nazis' weapon range all the way to the USA. When Michner learns that Brian Koenig is fascinated by the science of what he is creating and has no thought of the possible impacts, the detective chooses death for the young scientist.
Another kind of interesting storyline, I suppose, for the season.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, just in the fact that, and John Logan does this for all the seasons of Penny Dreadful as well. He kind of colors the stories with historical references, like our reality, and I really like that because he brings it a little closer to us so we can relate. So with Brian Koenig coming up with a rocket and then having these wild ideas about nuclear, like a nuclear device. Yeah, I kind of put it akin to those references back in the earlier Penny Dreadful seasons where they referenced what happened in the underground during the Victorian era, just like realistic touch points. I really appreciated that. But I found, I know I'm a sucker for alliances with the bad guys and their actual, real badasses, so Benny Berman is one of my favorites because, you kind of feel like safe, an uneasy safety with him because, he's going to get you back. And it was a terrific deal that he and Michner had. It was almost like making a deal with the devil when he says something like, you realize we're friends for life now. And that's basically, and that was such a big moment, I think, for the character, for Lewis as well.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I really liked Tony Berman this season as well.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think the great thing about Brian Koenig's journey is just, it's the flip around who he feels protected by and safe, in the sense that he kind of intuitively knows that Herr Goss, and his Gestapo, sidekick, Kurt, really probably isn't a good idea, but he's kind of doesn't have an awful lot of choice in it. And he's kind of being showered with praise and the possibility of future prizes. But ultimately, he feels safe with Dottie, and with Michner, and just that gets reversed. And I suppose it's that question that John Logan, I suppose asks here, if you had the chance to possibly prevent the atom bomb, then what would you do?
Exactly.
Would you it's kind of like, what would you do if you could go back in time and kill Hitler? Would you go and do it? It's kind of that sort of thing here. Just because of the influence that obviously, nuclear weapons have had, within World War II and through the Cold War. So I thought that was just kind of quite nice. You know, it's what would you do? And I think the scene in that final episode is like so great, with Michner. Yeah. Feeling that weight of what he's about to do, given that he's been protecting this kid, for pretty much the previous 9 episodes of this series. So, I really like that. And of course, who didn't like, well, at least for me anyway, who didn't like Dottie? I think Dottie Minter is the kick-ass granny that we kind of always want, really. Absolutely. She was doing riots in Chicago. She was running guns to Cuba. You know, gosh, we live in crap times, don't we? I would love to know someone like that.
I don't want to do either of those two things. I'd like to talk to someone that does this thing.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't like to do them, but you know, you there's this experience of Dottie Minter that's kind of, you know, she's the person that would surprise you. You'd be sat with this relatively elderly lady, and next thing you know, she's a kick-ass.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the supernatural side. The bit that binds kind of the rest of the series is kind of the supernatural side. John, do you want to take us on with the discussion of Magda, really?
Yeah. Meanwhile, throughout the City of Angels, Demon Magda creates various personas to influence susceptible men to ready the path for her arrival when nation battles nation, race devours race, and brother kills brother. Not a soul will be left, and Magda will appear. Her first persona, Alex, takes the form of a mousy personal assistant to closeted gay councilman Charlton Townsend. Working with German architect Herr Richard Goss, Alex encourages Townsend to get support for a road through immigrant populations in Los Angeles by promising him greater power in the city. They keep the councilman in check by arranging a relationship with Kurt, a handsome but dangerous Gestapo officer.
That sounds like Showtime wrote that, didn't it? They didn't. The handsome but dangerous Gestapo officer on the wrong side of the law.
John's been reading way too many summaries throughout our 500 and so episodes, so now he literally could become a copy editor for
well, he was a handsome but dangerous Gestapo officer. Yeah. He was a surfer. He was a surfer dude, but an evil surfer dude. I thought they were supposed to be more chilled and relaxed than that, to be honest.
No. See, these are the secret surfers. These are the secret surfers that are evil. Basically, I'm pretty sure there's a movie like
that would be awesome. It's in the same way that the Americans trained dolphins to put mines on sort of Russian ships. The Nazis created a squadron of
dolphins versus Nazi surfers. Oh my god!
I think we've got a script here, Chris. I think we need to go.
I think you might.
Yeah, we need to write.
We might have to travel back in time to the 50s to make it, though. But one of the things I think we were all talking about throughout the season was, Kurt's, a member of the Nazi party. He moved to Germany. He got his training in the Nazi party, and then he comes back, and he's clearly falling in love with Townsend at points in this series. And we're all waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like, you do realize that you are going to be killed for being gay, Kurt. Why are you supporting this regime? Is it just because you're white and you hate anybody that's non-white? Do you not realize that they also hate people like you? There's a moment where Townsend brings him into the underground club and shows him what nightlife can be like for gay people in LA at the time. And he seems really impressed by it. And you're kind of going, this exact club right here, everybody here will be murdered by Nazis and you're helping them out. When will the other shoe drop? So I think there's an interesting storyline for him as well, if we get into a season 2 for...
I just was shocked that they decided to go with a potentially bisexual Gestapo agent.
Well, there was a lot of it about, actually, in I know, but
Nazi
Germany.
They were known as deplorables. No, it was deplorables.
Yes.
They were subhuman less than because of their sexual orientation. I just think it's...
Yeah.
Interesting. It was an interesting choice. It makes great sense for the story. I can see. Yeah. It was. It's essentially, you could have just quite as easily just had it as a female Gestapo agent with Townsend being a cis straight white man, but this is actually a better story. And I think, as you said, it'll be interesting to see where it goes in season 2, if we get a season 2, always with the if, caveat, because they can explore that, which is, I'm a racist, I'm a Nazi, I'm Gestapo, I'm gay. These two sides of me don't equate to the same thing.
Absolutely. He thinks he's going to be safe, basically, because of the support that he's given. But, you know, you learned throughout the war, you learned that lots of people that supported him over time were picked off as people that weren't desirables of what the Nazi dream was, effectively. So, a good choice for that character.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is another great point of complexity with a character. You know, Townsend, again, abhorrent, yet his dad is probably even worse. And you have that great moment where you realize he's got daddy issues. And then also that he is in the same kind of fairly misogynistic, and he's racist, yet he's also gay. And it's this idea that this spectrum that is being portrayed here, by, the character of Charlton Townsend has so many contradictions in it, potentially for some people. And he's also aligning himself with, you know, Hergos, here and the Nazis in order to gain power. I mean, you know, it is spelt out really explicitly to him that when they march down, you know, the broad avenues in LA, that do you want to be crushed under that jackboot or be with the conquerors, I suppose. So like it's a really, amazing mix of different directions for this just single character, and all the time having Alex whispering in his ear, that sort of political advisor. And of course, like, you know, Alex does have this moment where she offers Michner actually sort of a different alternative. And I suppose this is the one thing for me just to raise here is, you know, I think ultimately Magda, in some respects, she's neutral in terms of the means to her end. Yeah. She doesn't care who she aligns with, and she's willing to help out anyone as long as it brings about chaos and conflict. And that's why you have Rio on one side, you have Elsa and Alex on another, but Alex has this other little element where she offers something to Michner. Now, how that plays out, we don't know. It's certainly not explored in this season. It could be something for season 2. So it's just that nice little touch, I think.
Absolutely. Lots more personas of Magda as well in the show. John, want to kick on?
For sure. The second, Rio, is a co-leader of a flamboyant Mexican-American group, the Pachucos. She influences Tiago's younger brother, Mateo Vega, to murder the racist abuser Officer Riley, igniting tensions between the Mexican-American residents and the LAPD. When Tiago finds out it was his brother who murdered the officer, he pins it and the murder of the Hazlitt family on another member of the Pachucos, Patsy Diego Lopez. Diego believes he has the powerful hold over Tiago, but on his transfer to San Quentin State Prison, Lewis Michner is unable to protect the boy from the violent, bigoted cops who bind Lewis and lynch Diego on the streets of his hometown.
Oof, yeah, probably the most affecting scene in the whole series, really, for me. I think that was a really difficult scene to watch, and seeing it compared, I suppose, while the Vega family were coming together, having that dance sequence all together in the Crimson Cat while this terrible lynching is going on, was really tough to watch.
A third persona, German immigrant Elsa, is trying to influence another German immigrant, Dr. Peter Craft, to embrace his family's legacy as warmongers, to lead his German-American Bund organization into an influential Nazi-supporting lobby group. To achieve this goal, she creates a fourth manifestation, Frank, who creates a rift between the Craft family and their beloved housekeeper, Tiago's mother, Maria Vega. Finally, Magda also takes advantage of a standoff between the LAPD and the Workers' Union, led by Tiago's brother, Raul Vega, to whisper in the ears of both sides to turn the confrontation violent. Raul is left with a life-threatening injury until his mother, Maria, calls on the power of Santa Muerta to save him. Raul is forever changed by his brush with death, but believes he has a purpose yet to be fulfilled. As Tiago mourns the loss of Sister Molly, Magda pays a silent visit to him. The ground is now prepared for her arrival, and Tiago will have a part to play.
Ba-ba-ba-bum. Ba-ba-ba-bum.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Just the way you finish that up, and they will have a
good.
part to play.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah, he's getting much better at the synopsis for the show, definitely. Raul, I think we couldn't just call him out here. A really good actor, playing the role, from the first couple of episodes. We got a lot of the character, and then he just dropped out of the show, only to come back in episode 9 and go, I know I have a purpose yet to be fulfilled. And then he dropped out of the show again, for the last episode. And you're going, okay, I get that you have some promise, something that you haven't fulfilled, but put it in the show, put a little bit of it in the show that he is zombie connected to Santa Muerta or something. Show a little bit of
Say it again. What is he? He is
zombie bro.
Yeah. He is zombie. That's the only thing I can think of that they're doing with this character. They're setting him up almost like the monster from the original first season. He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was the direct just representation of, they repeated that phrase of race versus race, and brother versus brother, brother kills brother. So we got in the very first episode, I think it was first or second episode, when Tiago goes up against Raul. I thought that was just a direct thing, and it was a shame because he's such a good actor. But yeah, he was zombified, as you say, Chris.
Yeah, I think they'll turn him into, he'll find in the next season, if they can. If we get it, that he'll get shot in the arm and it doesn't heal, or his head will be decapitated, he'll fall back on, he'll put it on, just like, he'll full on zombie out over time.
That would be really cool,
Yeah.
I think.
Unkillable Raul Vega.
Because zombies are an important part of the kind of culture of that area. Yeah. So, I think that could be really, really good.
It really could be, but I hope the rest of the second season isn't just, one scene of that where he doesn't die from something and the rest of the time he sits listening to baseball on the radio.
Oh no, but can you imagine? That's him decomposing. So you could actually do that, which is, they bring him out for the big stuff because he's slowly decomposing. Right. He doesn't have the energy, he's lethargic because he has no blood pumping around him. And you could literally just have a scene where he's like parts of his flesh is slowly just peeling. It could be. He
would be like Peter Griffin. He would just sort of get meshed into the sofa where he kind of stands up and he's got a sofa on his back. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be a little controversial here though, because I agree he was underutilized. Okay. But I think actually for me, the greater crime of a character underutilized in this was actually Mateo. And it's not to say that he didn't have big parts to play. He did. But I think that was the point. He had this huge thing with Officer Riley that he did, and the whole confrontation with Tiago and so on. And even with the death of Fly Rico, in the final episode. And of course, then he was just sent to the sort of oil fields where all the derricks are, sort of hiding out. And
Derek's out there hiding? Oh my God.
Yeah. Just
an
hiding
army
out.
of Dereks.
And we were kind of reintroduced to him where he was kind of umming and ahhing about whether it was, go back to the family or stay with Rio and Fly Rico. And I just felt at the moments when he needed more of a spotlight on him, he dropped. And I think that for me was potentially the bigger crime than leaving Raul just to kind of be under the radar across the whole season. That to me, I just kind of lost him. Right. And I thought that was a real shame because I really liked his performance. I loved his struggle between his family, and the Pachucos. I loved the struggle between him and Tiago. That scene where effectively he's getting measured up by Rio for his Pachuco suit. Well, who doesn't like a naked sort of measuring up session? And then just the death of Officer Riley, huge and one of the most disturbing kind of scenes, I think, and bloody, in the show. And then it just felt like he dropped into this shack hiding from the cops. And I get that would do, but I kind of felt I wanted more then. So that's just kind of my view on it a bit, really.
I think we already mentioned, like, the final episode does have a massive moment as well for the whole Pachuco team, and then for it just to be kind of dropped again in that episode, but at least it's there. I think, again, overall, it kind of gets more lost in all of the stories that are being told throughout the season, rather than there not being enough of Mateo. I think there is enough, maybe just it's layered in throughout a much bigger story with so many other characters that it feels like there isn't enough, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll see.
I think as well, there was something about the, just the Rio talking about the kings of the Aztecs, the blood of the Aztecs, and all that kind of stuff. I felt this is where this supernatural element could have really come in. And there was something about Mateo's eyes and stuff when he was killing Riley, where it felt like in seasons 1 to 3, when you came across the demon and their eyes were black. That wasn't the case, but I just felt that that's where you could have had this supernatural element coming from the superstitions and folklore around the culture of the Aztecs that Rio was really highly referencing in these moments. I thought that could have been really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the kind of general overview of the series. I know that there's a couple of things that we didn't put in because it didn't fit into the main narrative of the series. Any big moments that we haven't talked about, or any big moments you want to call out, Ray, first?
Look, just in general, I think Magda, I was thinking about this, the other day, actually, and Chris, you pointed it out a bit earlier on in the episode about her role and her influencing, and this thing about Craft and her role as Elsa in that. I think what John Logan's done, and again, it's not all black and white, but if you look at all the iterations of Magda, so number one, Alex, she has more of a political sway, over events and an influence with the politics. I think with Rio, it's more of a social thing. So she's really pushing the Pachucos. She's really trying to incite some sort of chaos there. And for Craft, though, it's a lot more smaller scale. For me, it's more domestic. So what she does initially is basically just break up that relationship. And it may seem like a little thing, and Craft starts to build up her influence over him starts to build up over something else, which is bigger and grander. But I think essentially, that was to show her domestic influence and like how she can influence just like man in that sense. And then you have Magda at the very beginning, at the very outset, and she kickstarts everything. Like she literally whispers in those officers' ears and Raoul's ears as well. So she has more of that direct supernatural influence. But exactly as you say, John, I think the influence is very subtle, and maybe there could have been more supernatural injection into it by visually showing something, having a few more visual cues. But she was certainly there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in with mine very quickly. We talked about supernatural and a lack thereof, or a less than that we would have wanted. We're forgetting potentially the creepiest aspect of this show: a little boy named Frank. The molding of Frank, the one scene, well, there's actually two scenes that are creepy. One, which is, essentially Frank when we first meet him, in Dr. Craft's office, and Elsa and Frank are in the elevator and they just meld together. And you're like, what the, what? And
the biological termination.
Yeah, you're just like, holy God. So I think that is, and Frank was a standout character. The level of creepiness and the scene with Mama Vega, or that collection of scenes with Mama Vega in the house, and just the culmination of him just looking at her, putting his hand over the fire and just putting it down and staring at her and then crying. Just creepy as hell.
That was an amazing scene, actually, the way he portrayed that. Screaming with his hand on the burner, looking at Mama Vega, and then Craft and Elsa come in, and the change to like this quivering sort of hurt child was just like oh my goodness, he did that so well. I thought that was amazing.
The second creepiest scene in this whole season was the knocking boots on a grave. It's just creepy. Not gonna lie. I'm not gonna get into it. It's just creepy.
It was. I must say that did just kind of transport me to the fairy tales of Brothers Grimm. So just the way it was framed with the twisted trees, the moonlight, the kind of slight bit of fog or whatever, and the two of them kind of having a good old sort of shufty on the grave of this dead fella. I was just like, oh my goodness.
I know, but it's a weird conversation, really, wasn't it? It's like, oh, your husband died after he attacked you. Oh, you murdered him. Oh, well, I'll come over and I'll help you take care of the body. We'll bury the body, and then let's have sex on top of the grave. Yeah. It's like, do you not think you've kind of lost it at that point somehow?
Probably.
So I'm going to need to kill someone, and then I can speak from empirical evidence. But I just don't think so. No, I don't. I'm just like, okay, look, everyone's allowed their own kink. I'm not kink shaming. If you want to have coitus on the fresh grave, go for it. Just please don't do it at night with a demon. Okay.
Everyone's allowed to have their kink, but I do think that one is illegal.
Okay, true. That is actually, yes.
She did murder her husband or her pretend husband, and then helped bury the body and then have sex. I think
that was illegal, but I think the kink that would be illegal was if that scene was a 3-way.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Has to take it further, doesn't he? John, any points from the series that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about?
I've got 3, of course, and I will run through these really quickly. Okay. I think one of them is the same as Ray's, actually. It is, it's that interrogation, that interview scene at the LAPD between Tiago, Diego, and Michner. I just think Nathan Lane here is quite simply fantastic, and how he, is both really angry at Tiago, and yet due to his own kind of extracurricular fighting Nazis, he realizes that, as well, in some ways he needs to protect his partner. And I think Diego here, it's just really well. He thinks he's got the upper hand, and then this grizzled, experienced detective basically lays it on the truth in the most brutal fashion, because it's just simply, it is a weighted system, and this is how it will work. And it's that idea of being trapped, and you see that change in Diego, and you see with the truth coming out about Tiago knowing it's his brother Mateo who killed Riley, and so on, and it all gets wrapped up into this bow where it also brings in the Hazlitt case. And I just think Michner's delivery here is fantastic, both in and outside. And I think the whole build up of that scene across the episode, is really, really good. And I think for me, it links into the other part, which is the whole Crimson Cat Vega dance, which then gets cut with Diego being lynched. It's like, that is so powerful, how that built, with this huge amount of happiness around the Vega family kind of coming back together, having this massive bust up as only families can, but ultimately working through it with the tragedy that's unfolding then with Diego, and with the crux of the LAPD. Yeah. And then, again, Michner being unable to do anything about it. So they're 2 absolutely my favorite big moments. And the other are with Maria Vega, and with Santa Muerta. I loved her grotto. I loved her there with Santa Muerta. Maria Vega was just awesome. And again, I think she could have been used a bit like Mr. Lyle in season, in the original Penny Dreadful, to bring out about this sort of Mexican superstition, this Aztec superstition a bit more, because she had that Santa Muerta aspect. I loved her having the coyote moniker as well, and I loved her with Michner together when he's round at the Vega family house in the grotto, and Michner does play up the laughs in that, but it's just those scenes for me there was something really special about that, as well as the hospital one as well. Yeah. And I thought they were really good. Maria and Santa Muerta, fantastic. I thought they were great together.
Can I just alongside John's great points, because that was one of my points as well. So I just want to add, apart from what John was mentioning about the that interrogation scene, it was very cool. The performances, the way it was written. But for me, it was a big moment because it was like a game of checkers, 1, 2, 3, and 3 big moves. He kind of tied everything up, as you say, John, in a bow. I thought it was a masterstroke. So he kind of, he gets Mateo off. So he saves Tiago. He gives the Hazlitt case. He closes that up. So that's number 2. And in that one move as well, he actually, he kind of almost saves Diego in the sense that it's like, if you confess now, the cops aren't going to beat you to death. You're going to be king in the jail. So he wrapped everything up. It was a great, brilliant move. Yeah. That's why I liked it.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Wonderful performance from Lewis. And again, I love how John Logan has captured something that is right in the zeitgeist right now about police using their abilities and their power to influence everything that's going on around them because they have that power. I think it's really interesting that it's called out there. You've already kind of mentioned what my main point for the season is, but I just thought it was interesting when looking back at the entire season. My favorite character of the show, we didn't really even mention her in the recap of the whole season. My favorite character of the show is Mama Maria Vega. I think every scene that Ariana Barraza is in, she owns it. And I think just the simple fact of her being the matriarch of the Vega family, where everybody's looking at her going, you're just a cleaner. But she's so much more than that to everybody around her, everybody that looks to her for protection, everybody that looks to her for her respect, and all of the interactions she has with all the characters throughout the season. I love that moment in her grotto to Santa Muerta. I love the fact that she is so active in connecting with the supernatural. She literally kind of picks up her supernatural phone and calls down a deity to talk to her. That's a massive ability to have. And I think when you look at it and think what this could be in season 2, when we see what's going to happen between these battling forces, I think it comes down to her speech in episode 7 where she talks to them and saying that her family aren't pawns, they're kings and queens. The blood of the Aztecs run through them. The soldiers of the revolution will walk beside us, all of these things where she says she's going to fight Magda to the end on the side of her family to save the world. All of that stuff is really powerful, and it's something that I really want to see more of because the actress is magnificent throughout the season. I love how sassy she is with her kids. Yeah. I love how violently angry she gets about all the choices they're making, and then she kind of goes, I suppose, okay, I take the point that you're all making your own decisions, and that's how I brought you up, kind of thing. So, but she is also so protective of the Craft kids, which I think is really important for their storyline.
There was a really nice moment where she had just been at the Crafts and she'd been doing all their cleaning, all that stuff, and she comes back to cook the food, and there's no one there, and she's doing all these lovely kind of empanadas and what have you. And I did in my head, I had Kate Bush's This Woman's Work kind of thing going around in my head, because I felt it was just really poignant for, it wasn't about supernatural. It was this kind of humdrum of her being a cleaner, coming back and then doing the household stuff, and kind of her family not really helping out at all. And I thought that was really quite a cool little sequence as well.
Chris, I know you're getting out of here and you're going to join us for our feedback section later on. Any last points on the season of Penny Dreadful City of Angels before you go?
No, I'm just really excited. As I said, I know I became more tepid on my look back on it. That shouldn't take away from any of our listeners' enjoyment with this. It's essentially, I just want to know. I know that originally a lot of production in the LA was due to start back in first week in August in LA. LA has gone back into lockdown. And some of this was filmed on site in the City of Angels. So I do believe potentially even the announcement for season 2 may be pushed back based on this, especially the way that the old Rona is treating us all. So I think I'm going to set my expectations quite low in terms of when we'll get an announcement. I'm going to be happy when we do. I think we're all on the same page that while this show had some faults, I think it was just overall a fantastic 10 hours to spend in the city in this time period in, once again, John Logan's, to a degree, crazy mind.
Absolutely. That's it for our discussion, really, on season 1 of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. Ray, thank you so much for joining us for our discussion about this episode, and I hope you enjoyed the season overall.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, guys. I love talking to you guys about it. Who better than to talk about it with TV podcast industry? So, no, thank you very much. And I'll be watching if ever there's a season 2 and onwards.
Excellent. We will take a quick break, and we'll be back with our feedback part of the episode and the winner of our pub quiz. We've already recorded it, so myself, John, and Chris all know the actual winner, but Ray doesn't. So Ray, you'll have to listen to the episode to know.
I know.
Right, we will be back in a moment. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
No worries. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ray.
This is Cheo Coker, the creator, showrunner, and executive producer of Marvel's Luke Cage. You're listening to TV Podcast Industries, formerly known as the Defenders TV Podcast.
And we're back. It's just me, John, and Chris here for our feedback section and the final answers to our Penny Dreadful pub quiz. And we announced the winner of the awesome Penny Dreadful goodies. Looking forward to that.
Yes.
But first up, we have some feedback in from the wonderful Steve Brown.
Hey guys, this is Steve. This is for the series finale of Penny Dreadful, and I have to admit, not quite as dramatic or maybe anticlimactic. Maybe more anticlimactic than I expected it to be. Of course, some significant things happened, and we had some significant interactions, but I was a little underwhelmed, I want to say. But the few standout performances, obviously, Nathan Lane, just seeing the anguish on his face as Michner having to kill the kid was just heartbreaking, and he played it so well. You could tell that it was not something he wanted to do. Loved the little moment of recognition between Rio and Elsa, the moment before Frank screams in the car and starts everything. But it was a little bit, again, and maybe this is something they're going to pick up on next season, but there are really no wide-ranging consequences for that Pachuco uprising there in after the car accident and all that stuff, and we didn't see much of that. And of course, we don't see much of Mateo after he says, goodbye, brother. So the interaction between Tiago and Magda, interesting. I wonder what's going on there. I'm interested to see if maybe Sister Molly is going to become the new Santa Muerta, or is she going to be another figure next season. I hope we get a next season, because there's really a lot of things for them to wrap up. And of course we see, I can't remember Rory Kinnear's character's name, the Dr. Craft. We see him putting on the medal and adopting the Heil Hitler salute. So a lot of stuff, I guess, for next season. I hope it gets confirmed. Anyway, can't wait to hear you guys' thought. I have not listened to your series finale coverage yet, so I need to listen to that so I can send him my answer to the question. Hopefully I'll get it in time. All right, talk to you later.
Thanks so much, Steve. And I can confirm Steve did actually get his answer in for the final question for the pub quiz, which will be coming up in a mo. And
that's the end of that feedback.
No, not at all. No, loads of great feedback there from Steve. Yeah, I know there's a lot of comments on the fact that this really does set up a second season, and if it doesn't get a second season, how disappointed that would be. I think we said that on our finale podcast, but there is some great stuff in the episode, as you mentioned, with Lewis Michner particularly. I think his moments with Brian Koenig, where he has to kill him to prevent a much worse fate for everybody, effectively, I think is a great moment in the show overall. As to whether Sister Molly will come back in the second season as a deity, I'm still not too sure whether that was just how the scene was written, or whether that was intentional to set her up as some kind of deity in the future. What do you guys think?
I'm 50-50 on it. I think, if anything, she could become the third sister, the connection to humanity. But it's also, as you said, it's just probably a very good narrative, because based on her story about the sister and the bunk beds, bunt beds, they're similar to bunk beds, but they were the German for the bunt.
I like it.
Yeah, the bunt beds. I'm saving my misstep. No. So, I really don't know about the whole deity piece and what Steve was saying in terms of feeling whelmed, or just kind of just the opposite of overwhelmed.
So not over or underwhelmed. Okay.
Yeah, it's just whelmed. Yeah. I can see where he's coming from. I do think there's going to be, we did see the beginning of the fallout from the Pachuco riot from that one day, which is the cops starting to close off the hometown. So that very last scene, this isn't America. Exactly what Trevor says. Like, this is America. Yeah. So I think that's where it comes to. Yeah. When we get season 2, if we get season 2, a lot of that should be addressed, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think, I'm with you in the sense of feeling a little underwhelmed from the final episode, but I still enjoyed it, and I think I still scored it pretty well. I mean, I was definitely a fan of it, but I think it all came down to setting up for season 2. And to be honest, it was reminiscent of season 1 of Penny Dreadful and its final episode, where, okay, there was this kind of battle in the Grand Guignol Theatre. But otherwise it wasn't sort of as climactic as some of the other episodes. But I think that's kind of, the way, really, in a lot of stuff, and certainly if you continue it through to a season 2. So I mean, it does hinge a bit on there being a season 2, but I did like the episode. I thought the massive battle with the Pachucos and with the sailors and what happened with Fly Rico was really good, and even the events leading to Molly committing suicide in the baptismal swimming pool, I thought was, was really good. And with Brian, as you say, I think all those points were massively, significant. Yeah. I suppose it hinges on this season 2 element, I think, to be honest. Yeah. But I did like the episode. But yeah, I would say I was whelmed. I was happy enough with it. I wasn't over or underwhelmed. So
satisfied. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I'm there as well. Yeah. Just I think that is, and we've discussed it earlier when we were wrapping up kind of each of our thoughts about this. But I think that's kind of the best way to kind of where I am on this. I think we've talked about it in like some of the Netflix Marvel shows, in that I will feel better about it dependent on what happens in season 2. Yeah. So absolutely. I think that's kind of like, it's even to say the Craft storyline. That is probably the best analogy. Throughout the whole season, I was like, I have no idea where this is going. I have no idea. And then by the end, I was like, well done. Yeah. You took me on a journey. I didn't know where I was going, and I'm glad we went there.
Absolutely.
I think that's going to be the same with season 2.
Definitely. And there's one narrative choice that I think was a bit odd in the final episode. You mentioned it there, Steve, in your feedback as well. Mateo becoming the leader of the Pachucos. Like, Steve, I know you mentioned we didn't see him again. You're right. We didn't see him again at all in regards to the Pachucos, but we did see him go back with the Vegas to this Day of the Dead celebration in the grave and have all the family together. That's a narrative choice because the series is supposed to be about the family, but it does seem really weird considering what has just transpired in the city, that he would come back to his family for that little moment at the end of the episode. It makes, again, it's something that you want to see on screen. You want to see this whole family together because you want to see that nothing can break them apart. That's one of the central things that's happened throughout the season. But it did seem a bit odd that we didn't get some kind of aftermath to the fact that he murdered Fly Rico, or that he was taking responsibility for the death of Fly Rico after Rio murdered him and left his brother to die in the streets, effectively. And then he comes back and sees him at the end of the episode. It does feel like there's no fallout to that in this season, but we'll see it next season. Yeah, so they wanted to just have that moment to say, no matter what happens between this family, they will all come back together for these big things, like people coming back together for Christmas or for Thanksgiving in America, I suppose. They'll all come back together, even if there's loads of tensions between them. They still have to get together for these moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I said in the in the main part of the podcast, I do feel that Mateo was probably the most underutilized, given the significance of his storyline. I know. So, I mean, I definitely think that. And I also think that, again, similar to maybe season 1 of the original Penny Dreadful, actually, this is only showing a very small snippet of a grander scheme, I think, in the same way that season 1 originally did. It's a snapshot, and it's a very focused snapshot, even though it's broad within its setting. And that the grander scheme is much larger than this season. So I think that is definitely how I would view this final episode, and dare I say it, the whole season, really.
I often wonder if that's just to do with the actual writers themselves. Like, John Logan obviously did the first 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful, but he's probably aware that given the relationship he has with Showtime, and given the relationship he has with the fans of that show, that people are willing to give him a little bit of leeway to tell his story the way he wants to, and tell us a first season because he's going to get a second season. But I wonder whether that's worked for him in this case. You know, you see it with directors like John Carpenter, you know, an absolute master of directing movies, but as he went on in his career, he made movies very similar to the kind of stuff that was massively popular in the 80s, but it was a different audience that he was making it for by the time he came around into the 90s and into the noughties. I wonder whether John Logan has just pitched this as a show that will run for 3 seasons, and not delivering a first season to a brand new audience may not have worked for him. But we have talked about this a lot in the main part of the podcast. Thanks so much for your feedback, Steve. Thanks so much for all your feedback throughout the season. It's been really good to have you. Yeah. And congratulations on the 100th episode of your own podcast. Guys, go and listen to that. It's actually a really good chat with Steve, Mark, and 2 of the guys from Comic Book Men on AMC.
Yeah, Steve. Absolutely. Thanks, Steve, so much for the feedback. Really great to get your thoughts in through audio.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you'll be joining us for season 2 of Umbrella Academy when we get there. I think it's time to get over to the pub quiz. We've delayed it long enough, John. Time to get over to the Crimson Cat for the finale and all the actual answers of the pub quiz questions.
I don't know. It's quite early in the morning, gentlemen. I don't know if I can go. I'll go for a white wine spritzer.
There you go.
Well, I still need the shot of coffee, so I'll go for a martini, express martini, or whatever they are.
Bloody Mary, maybe? Anybody? Yeah, would suit quite well with the Penny Dreadful theme, gentlemen.
No, pepper and...
actually, I do like Bloody Mary. Oh, well done. Well done. Round of applause.
There you go. Bloody Santa Martin for everybody.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
John, let's run through the questions and answers for season 1 of Penny Dreadful's pub quiz. Question 1 on episode 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for getting involved in the Crimson Cat pub quiz for Penny Dreadful City of Angels. We'll run through the episodes and the answers, and then we will inform you of the winner, the top 3. Yes, so... Episode 1, question 1. What was Detective Santiago Vega's LAPD badge number? It was 815.
Yeah, that was on his bedside table.
It certainly was. For question 2, that book that Dr. Craft was reading, which was soon to be adapted into a film, was Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, from 1936.
Yes.
Then in episode 3, the question, what investigation gave Captain Vanderhoff sleepless nights when he was a detective with the LAPD? It was the Florence Moore case. It was based on the case of Marion Parker, a 12-year-old who was murdered in a similar way in 1927 by her father's ex-employee. This is the one that Frank conjures up for Tommy at the sleepover to really freak him out and to really crystallize in Tommy's mind that Frank was a bit of a psychopath.
Yeah, I remember being really annoyed that you chose this as the question for episode 3 because I'd written out all the details about the Marion Parker case. I've been really proud of myself for finding it. And then John chose this as the question. I was going, well, I can't tell everybody it now. But
you brought it out in the final few podcasts that we covered of the episode 9 and 10. So... there's a little bit of a wait, Question 4, the drink that Linda Craft certainly likes to quaff quite a lot, and certainly to subdue the pain of screaming kids at her son's birthday party was a whiskey sour.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she certainly did knock a few of those back.
Yeah.
Question.
Hoping to see a lot more of Piper Parabo in season 2.
Definitely.
If she comes back. Yeah.
She would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I can really see her being a problem for Craft and for Elsa, for sure. Question 5. The swashbuckling action movie that was advertised in the scene where Tiago and Lewis were going to visit the Sonora Town honey Sophia, who had last seen Officer James Riley alive. It was The Adventures of Robin Hood, starring Errol Flynn. There was a huge billboard there as they walked towards Sophia's little kind of condo. So yeah, that was The Adventures of Robin Hood.
And once again, in your questions, you picked out something that became massive as the show went on. There was a whole subplot really about the love of Robin Hood, and the family go and see this particular film in the theatre later on in the series. Of course, the set designers all knew that. That's why they chose the poster, of course. But we didn't know when we chose that millisecond of footage.
Episode 6, question 6. The soda that Diego asks for while being interrogated by Lewis and Tiago was a can of knee-high. Yes. Never heard of that until this show.
I had heard of it, but I have no idea what it tastes like. Any idea, Chris? You've been over to America much more than we have recently.
No, but my assumption is, by the sounds of things, something like a yoo-hoo.
Okay, yeah.
And what's one of those? A hee-hee? We could go down this rabbit hole for quite some time.
A yoo-hoo's chocolate milk, isn't it? It's like a kid's drink, but we do see Brian Koenig asking for it during the series, and a knee-high, I think, is I guess it's a soda.
Like a yazoo.
Like a yazoo, exactly.
Yes, exactly. For UK listeners, a yazoo.
Oh my goodness.
There you go. Please correct us if we're wrong. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.
On to question 7. The plays that Dottie Minter recounts from her days with her father at the Yiddish theatre included such hits as King Lear, Faust, and dozens of their own plays, all done in the Yiddish language. Of course, King Lear being Shakespeare, Faust being Goethe, and of course then Dottie Minter collectively calls out her plays that she does with her father that were done in Yiddish at the Yiddish theatre. So,
really importantly, we gave 3 points for this answer because it's not that they just have plays like King Lear and Faust. It's also that there were dozens of other plays in Yiddish, and that's what caused the problem for Dottie Minter. So it was important that we had all those encaptured in the answers. The reason why I'm saying that is because this is where we started losing some people from our collective that have sent in their answers. So some people started missing some elements of the questions that you were asking, John. So important to note.
Well, yes. On to episode 8, question 8. What does Maria cook up for Trevor and Tommy as a treat as they listen to the radio? Yes, that lovely dark broadcast to the children. And it was popcorn. And of course, there is that moment where we do feel that Frank is going to do something slightly crazy, but he doesn't. He leaves that a little later on once Elsa and Peter Craft are back in the house.
He does pretend he's visiting the doctor again, opens his mouth very wide.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Yes, another one to mention, Maria cooks a lot throughout the season, so her cooking popcorn didn't stand out to some people, so we lost a few more answers here, yeah.
Oh no. Well, that's why it's called a quiz.
Exactly.
Yes. Episode 9, question 9. The game that Dottie teaches Brian Koenig to play is Mahjong. Yes, so in lockdown for Dottie and Brian, yes, they're playing the game Mahjong. So yes, as we've all been playing during lockdown.
Absolutely. The only thing I know about Mahjong is that it's always installed on your PC when you get it. It's beside Solitaire, and I've never ever played it because it looks really complicated. But Brian seems pretty good at it. Dottie seemed like she wins every single hand, though, because she's very, very good.
And finally, fellow dreaders, yes, it is question 10. The sauce that Benny Berman is cooking up at the Vega family residence, and the recipe that he promises to reciprocate to Mama Maria Vega. So he is cooking up Maria's mole sauce, which is a traditional Mexican marinade and sauce. And Benny promises to pass on the recipe of arugula to Maria, which is it is actually Yiddish for twists, and it is a Jewish pastry, a bit like a croissant that is done. So yeah,
Yummy.
I actually, when he said rugula, I thought he was saying, I will give you my recipe for rocket salad leaves.
Oh, right.
I was like going, okay, because obviously rugula is also rocket.
Is it? Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
In Italian, I think.
See, it's one of those ones when you see this on TV shows and, the mole, they make it all seem really, really tasty. And you're like, I hope they release a Penny Dreadful City of Angels cookbook so we can cook up some of the awesome stuff that's cooked throughout the series. The mole looked gorgeous, and the rugula, especially because it's kind of breakfast time here when we're recording, I would really like some Yiddish twists.
I think mole is also where they actually have chocolate in the sauce. I think they put
what now? I want it.
Yeah, it's it's cocoa, because obviously that would have been a traditional ingredient of kind of the Aztecs and so on. I think so. Okay. I think it's got chocolate in it. But anyway, moving on to Rich and Velvety, we want to thank everyone for their entries and contributing to the Penny Dreadful pub quiz.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to say huge thanks to everybody that entered over the course of the 10 episode series. I know it's really difficult. There's one question for every single episode. And we usually keep them towards the end of the episodes as well. So difficult to get all of your answers in throughout the season. We got a few entries for like 5 or 6 questions of the season, but we do have some standout people who did 10 questions and 10 answers for the season. John, do you want to count down our top 3?
Yes, so our top 3 in reverse order. On 11 points out of 13, it is Tristan Manuel. Thank you, Tristan. You get the bronze medal here for your pub quiz answers. In second place, it was Steve Brown with 12 points. And the winner is on a 13 out of 13 is Brianna Veelbruder. Thank you so much for that. Yes, you will be getting the Penny Dreadful prize, which will be drinking equipment, basically, that has the Penny Dreadful motifs. I think primarily of the Crimson Cat. So a big congratulations to Brianna for her hard work in getting a full 13 out of 13 for the pub quiz. And of course, to our silver placed medalist, Steve, and our bronze medalist, Tristan. It's always very competitive, these pub quizzes. And it's always down to the fine margins, a bit like on our 500th anniversary podcast for our 500th episode. We did 3 rounds of a pub quiz there, and again, it was all very, very close. So that's certainly the thing I've noticed with our pub quizzes so far.
And it seems to be the ones that seem so simple that throw people off. It seems to be those ones. There's a few questions that were in there that I thought would be quite difficult. And it seemed like the one that really threw everybody off was what Maria was cooking for Trevor and Tommy. Maybe just people don't think that she's cooking popcorn. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe because Maria's such a great cook throughout the show that there's so many other recipes that she did, the popcorn probably didn't stand out to people. But you did give them a clue that they were sitting down for their entertainment for the evening. So entertainment for the evening always includes popcorn. So well done. Yeah. Well done to our winner though, Brianna. I know Brianna's a massive fan of Penny Dreadful. I know she's been on Twitter and been listening to a bunch of other podcasts, listening to our podcast for a while as well. So congratulations, Brianna. We'll be in contact with you to get your details to send out your Penny Dreadful City of Angels goodies.
Yeah.
Yes. We're so glad for everyone could join us for this pub quiz. Of course, we may be doing another pub quiz coming forward. No spoilers, but we may be doing it. Will it be for Umbrella Academy? Will it be for the boys? Time will tell. Time will tell.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just don't know what the prize would be for the boys. I suppose it would be like 0.5 gram of Coke or something like that.
It's basically, it's a plaster cast of all of us giving the middle finger, cast in bronze. And just just we hate soups.
I was just thinking of a massive bag of blood that explodes
Well,
on arrival at the door. That's basically The Boys. Isn't
Exactly. Or maybe even for Umbrella Academy, we could get a nice little flowery, telescopic umbrella.
Yeah, a nice umbrella with the logo on it. It'd be pretty cool. Hope they sell those, actually. I'd love one of those for myself. Thank you so much for joining us throughout this season of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. Hopefully we'll see you back on the Dreadful podcast for season 2 of Penny Dreadful City of Angels, whenever it gets confirmed. If you're only subscribed to us over on the Dreadful podcast and you want to hear the rest of our stuff, come back over to TV Podcast Industries, where, as Chris mentioned, we will be covering The Umbrella Academy season 2 beginning on the 31st of July. Really looking forward to getting into that show.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we've already put out our season 1 recap over on Patreon, and that'll be available on our main feed on TV Podcast Industries. But if you want to get that right now, pop on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Support us on any level, and you'll get access to our Umbrella Academy episodes early, before anybody else. And we'll be back after the Umbrella Academy with The Boys season 2. Lots of season 2s coming up.
Yes.
Which I'm really enjoying, because we did a whole year of mostly season 1 of shows that we didn't know were going to be confirmed for a second season. So it's always exciting when you get into a second season with characters that you know. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, season 2 of Umbrella Academy will be on Netflix from the 31st of July, and we will be releasing the episodes from then. And season 2 of The Boys begins on the 4th of September. Mm-hmm. So we will be beginning our podcasts on The Boys from the 4th of September. Yeah. So there's a lot to come. And of course, if you are still waiting, if you are wanting to darken your days of the bright summer, then go to the evil dark world of City of Angels, Penny Dreadful, or indeed the first 3 series of Penny Dreadful in the dark, dank, gaslit Victorian era. If you dislike the sun like vampires, then absolutely that is the place to go.
Yes, and as we record this, we are a week ahead of Comic-Con at home, so obviously new shows may be announced, returning shows renewed shows may be announced, so as and when we find out the information, we will obviously over on Twitter and our socials, we will let people know if there's anything interesting. But at the same point, why not just follow us so you know too? You can follow us on Twitter at TV Pod Industries, and you can go to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries to ensure that you see the latest news, usually posted by our ever-loving blue-eyed producer Derek.
You're all going to have to do a lot more of that soon, guys, as we go into
I can't hear
the
you.
rest of the stuff. Yes. Hopefully there'll be more posts from the other guys as well. You get to see them a bit more over on socials. This has been a bit of a journey. 37 episodes of our Penny Dreadful podcast. 38 episodes, actually, if you include this one. Since we started in January, didn't we, with Ray, when we did the first episode?
I think so. It may have even just been into February. So it's kind of like 4 seasons of a show in 6 months.
Yeah.
What lockdown will allow you to do.
Absolutely. It did also allow us to get to our 500th episode way earlier than I thought we were going to as well. So yeah, thanks for that, Penny Dreadful. Thanks for joining us, fellow Penny Faithful.
Yes, thank you, Dreaders, for joining us. We really hope you enjoyed our coverage of City of Angels and, of course, the original Penny Dreadful series.
Yes, thank you so much. As always, we love seeing you. We love chatting to you. Well, obviously we can't see you, but that's a whole other story. I am imagining each and every one of you standing before me like a crowd. Yes, my accent will get worse as we decide to go to different countries and different shows.
Shoes?
I don't know why I was doing a great British accent. Very Shakespearean, if you will.
That was British.
No.
That wasn't even a little low British.
So any shows that involve Russian accents or any other accents, we will be avoiding so that Chris will not pollute the airwaves.
Yeah, no Das Boot for us.
See you guys. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow Dreaders. A pleasure speaking with you, as always. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep screaming.
Nice. Bye.